The air on Pax Nexus hummed with unspoken tension, a metallic scent of recycled oxygen doing little to mask the fear and frustration that clung to the delegates like static. Ambassador Elias Vance, his typically sharp suit feeling uncomfortably tight, swallowed a sigh. He stood before the holographic projection, an intricate swirl of blueprints for a human-designed terraforming drone, feeling the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. For weeks this interstellar conference had been a grueling battle. Oh, Wills! The Xylar hegemony, represented by their six-limbed ambassadors, sat across the polished table, their multiple eyes unblinking, their posture unyielding. They were ancient, powerful, and utterly beyond human comprehension in their rigid adherence to protocol. Opposite them, the Cathar Imperium, a species of proud reptilian warriors, shifted restlessly. Their snouts twitched, their taloned fingers tapped on the table's surface, betraying an impatience that bordered on open aggression. Elias had tried everything: logical arguments, passionate appeals, even veiled threats, but peace between these two galactic giants remained an elusive dream. Humanity, a relative newcomer to the galactic stage, desperately needed this alliance with the Xylar to counter the Cathar's expansionist ambitions. "We offer solutions," Elias began, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. "Not just technology, but a way of thinking. Our history is one of overcoming impossible odds, of adapting when others would surrender." He gestured towards the drone, its design showcasing layers of redundancy and repair systems, traits born from necessity on a world that had once faced total ecological collapse. This drone, for example, can rebuild an entire ecosystem from a single seed bank, even in the most hostile environments. It embodies our spirit, unconventional, yes, but undeniably effective. A low, guttural chuckle rippled from the Cathar side of the table. Their lead delegate, a towering reptilian named Vorleg, sneered. "A toy, Ambassador. Your species builds toys. We build empires." The Xylar remained impassive, their silence even more cutting than Vorleg's mockery. Elias felt a surge of frustration, a prickle of anger that threatened to burst his diplomatic facade. He clenched his jaw, searching for some final, desperate words. "Perhaps," he mused, allowing a wry, almost challenging smile to touch his lips, "it takes a certain unconventional mindset to appreciate truly revolutionary solutions. We find ways where others see only walls." His gaze swept over the Xylar, a subtle challenge in his eyes before resting on the Cathar. Vorlag scoffed again, louder this time, preparing to unleash another dismissive barb. But then a sound that cut through the tension like a finely tuned instrument vibrated through the chamber. It was a laugh, clear and melodic, entirely out of place in the grim atmosphere. All heads snapped towards the back of the Xylar delegation. There, partially shrouded by the imposing forms of the Xylar ambassadors, stood Princess Lyra Keth. She was rarely seen, a figure of myth and rumor even among her own people, and her presence at this pivotal conference was an unprecedented move. She was younger than Elias had imagined, her form slender and graceful, yet carrying an undeniable aura of power. Her multifaceted eyes, usually described as cold and calculating in official reports, now sparkled with an almost mischievous light. She tilted her head slightly, a gesture that was both alien and surprisingly human-like in its curiosity. Her gaze, warm and intelligent, locked onto Elias, bypassing the layers of fear and formality that separated them. The words that followed were delivered in a voice like chimes, melodic and resonant, yet infused with an unexpected spark of humor that caught everyone off guard. "If that was an offer," Princess Lyra Kith said, her smile widening just slightly, her eyes twinkling with "an unknown intent, I accept." A collective gasp rippled through the conference hall, followed by a profound, echoing silence. Elias, for once, was utterly speechless. The collective gasp that followed Princess Lyrakith's unexpected acceptance hung in the air like a fragile crystal, threatening to shatter at the slightest tremor. Ambassador Elias Vance, his mind racing, quickly recovered from his initial shock. He saw not a diplomatic blunder, but a crack in the Xyler's impenetrable facade, a chance to forge a connection no one had anticipated. With a practiced smile, he formally extended the invitation for her to observe human operations, specifically suggesting a tour of a deep space exploration vessel. Her immediate, graceful nod of acceptance sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the conference hall, baffling both the stoic Xyler delegates and the seething Cathar Imperium representatives. Vorlag, the Cathar leader, let out a frustrated hiss, his talons scraping against the table, a sound of pure, unadulterated annoyance. It was clear this unconventional turn of events was not to his liking, which to Elias was a small victory in itself. Within hours the logistics were arranged, a whirlwind of diplomatic activity that left the Pax Nexus staff reeling. Princess Lyrakith arrived at the human exploration vessel, the Pioneer not with a retinue, but with a single imposing Xyler guard. The guard, a towering figure of muscle and segmented armor, moved with a silent, almost predatory grace, his multiple eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The Pioneer itself was an older scout ship, its hull scarred by countless asteroid fields and atmospheric entries, but it was reliable, a workhorse of human ingenuity. Captain Eva Rostova, a woman whose face was etched with the lines of command and countless close calls, greeted them at the airlock. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, took in the princess and her guard, a flicker of apprehension crossing them. Eva was pragmatic, a no-nonsense leader who preferred straightforward orders to diplomatic complexities, and Lyrakith's presence promised anything but simplicity. The crew, a diverse group of engineers, scientists, and pilots, watched with a mixture of awe and unease as the princess stepped onto their deck. Her presence, so elegant and alien, immediately disrupted the ship's familiar rhythm. Lyrakith was endlessly curious, a trait that both fascinated and occasionally exasperated the crew. She moved through the ship with an almost childlike wonder, yet her questions were anything but naive. She probed into every aspect of human life, from the intricate workings of the ship's life support systems to the surprisingly varied textures and flavors of their nutrient paste. "Why do you consume so many different forms of sustenance?" she asked Elias one evening, observing him eat a synthetic apple. "Is one not sufficient for energy transfer?" Elias, ever the diplomat, patiently explained the human concept of enjoyment and cultural significance, concepts that seemed utterly alien to her. She was particularly fascinated by human adaptability and emotional expression. She would spend hours observing the crew, noting how they reacted to minor setbacks, a spilled drink, a flickering light with a range of expressions and sounds that seemed entirely unnecessary to her logical mind. "Your species," she observed during a tour of the engineering bay, watching a technician expertly patch a failing conduit with a jury-rigged solution, "possesses a remarkable capacity for improvisation. It is inefficient yet effective." Her multifaceted eyes would track the subtle shifts in Elias's facial expressions during conversations, as if trying to decipher a complex code. She seemed to be building a vast internal database of human unconventional solutions, a collection of data points that defy the rigid logic of her own people. The purpose of Lyra Keith's visit, beyond mere observation, was a routine atmospheric survey of a newly discovered gas giant, designated Tempest Prime. It was a volatile world, its swirling clouds a kaleidoscope of blues and purples, constantly racked by electrical storms and unpredictable wind currents. The mission was meant to be straightforward: deploy atmospheric probes, collect data on gas composition and energy potential, and return. But as the Pioneer descended into the upper layers of Tempest Prime's atmosphere, the ship's sensors flared with an unexpected contact. "Captain," shouted Ensign Rian, the comms officer, his voice tight with alarm. "Multiple Cathar signatures. They're moving fast, closing in." A jolt ran through the ship as the first energy blast struck, rattling the hull and sending sparks showering from an overhead conduit. The Cathar, still smarting from the diplomatic snub on Pax Nexus, had clearly followed the Pioneer, seeing an opportunity to provoke and perhaps even capture the Xylar Princess, a prize that would undoubtedly shift the balance of power. Evasive maneuvers. Captain Rostova barked, her hands flying across the console. The ship lurched violently as the pilot, Lieutenant Chun, wrestled with the controls, trying to navigate the treacherous winds while dodging incoming fire. Another blast hit, harder this time, causing the lights to flicker and die in parts of the ship. "Shields at 50%. Rian yelled, his voice strained. "Come array is down, we're blind." The situation spiraled rapidly. The Xylar guard, who had been standing silently beside Lyrakith, drew a gleaming, segmented blade, his posture shifting into a defensive crouch. He was built for close-quarters combat, a formidable warrior, but useless against a ship-to-ship assault. Lyrakith, however, remained eerily calm, her multifaceted eyes fixed on the main view screen, observing the chaos with an almost detached intensity. Elias, grabbing a handhold to steady himself, felt a cold dread creep into his stomach. The Cathar were relentless, their energy weapons tearing at the Pioneer's weakening defenses. The ship groaned under the strain, its internal alarms blaring a frantic, rhythmic warning. The gas giant's storms, once a beautiful backdrop, now became a terrifying, churning vortex, threatening to tear the crippled vessel apart. Elias glanced at Captain Rostova, her face grim, her brow furrowed in desperate concentration. He knew she was running out of options, trapped between the relentless Cathar and the unforgiving embrace of Tempest Prime. The ship shuddered again, a sickening crunch echoing through the deck as something vital tore away. They were losing altitude, being pulled deeper into the gas giant's swirling maw. The Cathar ships, like predatory sharks, circled for the kill, their weapons charging for a final decisive strike. Elias braced himself, wondering if this was how humanity's bold gamble would end, swallowed by a storm and the cold ambition of an empire. He looked at Lyriketh, still unervingly serene amidst the chaos, and wondered what she was truly seeing in humanity's desperate struggle for survival. The air within the Pioneer was thick with the smell of ozone and fear, the ship groaning like a dying beast as it plunged deeper into Tempest Prime's turbulent embrace. Alarms shrieked a relentless, high-pitched warning, joining the cacophony of sparking consoles and the desperate shouts of the crew. Another Cathar energy blast slammed into their stern, ripping through what remained of their aft shields, sending the vessel into a sickening spin. Elias Vance clung to a bulkhead, his knuckles white, watching Captain Eva Rostova wrestle with the unresponsive controls, her face a mask of grim determination. "We're losing power to the main thrusters," she yelled, her voice hoarse over the din. "Compensators are failing. We're being pulled in." Below decks, the engineers worked frantically, their faces smeared with grease and sweat, trying to patch ruptured conduits and restart failing systems. Ensign Rian, despite the comms being dead, continued to monitor the Cathar signatures on a flickering auxiliary screen. His updates shouted across the deck. "They're circling, Captain, forming a firing pattern. The Xyler Guard, Princess Lyriketh C. Silent Protector, stood ready, his segmented blade gleaming, but his advanced combat training was useless against the crushing pressure of the gas giant and the relentless barrage from the enemy ships. Amidst the chaos, Princess Lyriketh remained an island of unnerving calm. Her multifaceted eyes, unblinking, absorbed every detail, the panicked efficiency of the human crew, the desperate ingenuity of their repairs, the raw emotion etched on their faces. She watched Elias and Captain Rostova, their heads close, speaking in rapid, hushed tones, their hands gesturing wildly as they tried to find a way out. Their communication was a blend of technical jargon and intuitive understanding, a dance of logic and gut feeling. Lyriketh had observed this human element for days, their ability to adapt, to improvise solutions from seemingly nothing, to find strength in their shared vulnerability. It was a stark contrast to the Xailers' rigid adherence to pre-programmed protocols and the Cathar-esque brute force tactics. She saw the desperation in their eyes, but also a fierce, unyielding spark. They were not giving up. "The atmospheric currents are too strong," Captain Rostova muttered, slamming a fist on the console. "Any attempt to break free will tear us apart. We're a sitting duck." Elias, his brow furrowed in thought, pointed to a rapidly swirling vortex. On the main view screen, a monstrous purple eye and the gas giant's churning face. "What if we don't fight it? What if we ride it? There's a theory, a microgravitational anomaly within the eye. If we could hit it precisely, it might slingshot us out, or at least disrupt their targeting." Rostova's eyes widened. "It's insane. Elias, the calculations alone. Our navigation systems are fried. 1 degree off and we're crushed." The Cathar ships tightened their formation, their weapon conduits glowing ominously, preparing for the final volley. The ship shuddered again, a more violent tremor this time, and a section of the bridge ceiling buckled inward. It was then that Princess Lyriketh stepped forward. Her voice, though still melodic, carried a new urgency that cut through the alarms. Ambassador Vance, Captain Rostova, your insane maneuver. It has a high probability of success, given the variables. Elias and Eva stared at her, stunned. How? Elias began. Lyriceth's multifaceted eyes seemed to glow faintly. My people, we possess an innate capacity for complex spatial reasoning, a form of intuitive predictive analysis that surpasses even your most advanced computational models. I have observed your improvisation protocols closely. I can guide you. Her Xyler guard, for the first time, showed a flicker of surprise, his head tilting almost imperceptibly. Lyriceth, without waiting for a reply, moved to a damaged auxiliary console, her slender fingers hovering over the non-functional controls. Captain Rostova, prepare to vent plasma from the port thruster in 3.7 seconds. Not a full burn, a controlled burst. Ambassador Vance, prepare to initiate a counter-rotation on the starboard stabilizers, a precise 17-degree angle, once the plasma vent initiates. Her instructions came rapid fire, each command impossibly precise, factoring in the ship's damage, the gas giant's unpredictable currents, and the Cathar's closing formation. Captain Rostova, despite her initial disbelief, recognized the sheer impossibility of Lyriceth's real-time calculations. There was no time to question, only to act. You heard the princess. She roared to her crew, her voice finding new strength. Move, now. The ship became a hive of desperate, synchronized activity. Elias, guided by Lyriceth's calm, unwavering voice, initiated the counter-rotation. The Cathar, baffled by the Pioneer's sudden, erratic movements, hesitated. They had anticipated a direct escape attempt, a predictable flight path, but this was something else entirely. The human ship was dancing with the storm, not fighting it. As the Cathar weapons charged for their final strike, Lyriceth's voice rang out, now, full power to the main thrusters. Ride the current. With a deafening roar, the Pioneer plunged into the heart of the purple vortex, the ship shaking violently, as if it would tear itself apart. The Cathar fired, but their blasts were swallowed by the churning gas and the ship's unpredictable trajectory. For a terrifying moment, they were blind, deaf, and utterly at the mercy of the storm. Then, with a sudden, violent lurch, the Pioneer was flung upwards, propelled by the very forces that had threatened to destroy it. They shot out of the gas giant's atmosphere like a stone from a slingshot, leaving the bewildered Cathar ships far below, their sensors struggling to comprehend the impossible escape. The silence on the bridge was deafening, broken only by the ragged breaths of the crew and the distant hum of the ship's struggling systems. Elias looked at Lyriceth, who stood calmly, her multifaceted eyes now fixed on the receding gas giant. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. She had seen humanity's desperation, their improvisation, and their raw will to survive, and she had not only understood it, but amplified it. The human element, unpredictable and unconventional, had just saved them all. The journey back to Pax Nexus was a strange mix of relief and lingering tension. The Pioneer, battered but unbroken, limped through the void, its emergency lights casting long, flickering shadows across the faces of the exhausted crew. The air, once thick with the acrid scent of fear and ozone, now carried the faint tang of burnt wiring and the quiet hum of struggling life support. Captain Eva Rostova, though still grim-faced, allowed herself a rare, tired smile as she watched her engineers work miracles, coaxing life back into the ship's systems. Elias Vance, leaning against a bulkhead, felt the adrenaline slowly drain from his body, leaving him utterly spent. He watched Princess Lyriceth, who remained composed, her multifaceted eyes occasionally glancing at him, a silent acknowledgment of their shared ordeal. Her Zealer guard, too, seemed subtly changed, his rigid posture softened by a hint of something akin to respect. The Cathar, left bewildered and humiliated in the gas giant's swirling embrace, had not pursued them. Their defeat, unexpected and inexplicable from their perspective, was a victory in itself. But the true challenge awaited them back at the conference. When the Pioneer finally docked at Pax Nexus, the station's normally bustling corridors seemed to hold their breath. Word of the ambush and the human ship's miraculous escape had already spread, creating a palpable buzz of anticipation. Delegates from every species, including the Zealer and Cathar, gathered in the observation lounges, their faces a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and thinly veiled apprehension. As Elias and Lyriceth stepped onto the gangway, a hush fell over the crowd. Elias, though weary, held his head high, a silent testament to human resilience. Lyriceth walked beside him, her presence commanding, her Xylar guard a silent, imposing shadow behind her. The diplomatic corps, especially the Xylar and Cathar representatives, stared, unable to reconcile the image of the battered human vessel with the serene alien princess who had been aboard it. Bolag, the Cathar leader, his usual arrogance, replaced by a simmering fury, glared at Elias, clearly demanding an explanation for their inexplicable failure. The Xylar delegates, for their part, seemed to be in a state of quiet agitation, their multiple eyes fixed on their princess, trying to decipher her intentions. The conference reconvened, but the atmosphere was entirely different. The usual diplomatic niceties were stripped away, replaced by a raw, expectant silence. It was Lyriceth who broke it. She stepped forward, not to her Zealer delegation, but to the central podium, her voice resonating through the chamber, clear and melodic, yet imbued with a new-found authority. "Delegates," she began, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, "I have observed humanity. I have witnessed their unconventional solutions firsthand." She recounted the ambush in the gas giant's atmosphere, detailing the overwhelming odds, the damage to the Pioneer, and the relentless Cathar assault. She spoke of the human crew's desperate efforts, their frantic repairs, and their unwavering determination. Their vessel was crippled, she stated, her voice unwavering, their systems failing. By all logical metrics, they should have been destroyed. A ripple went through the Cathar delegation, their snouts twitching as they listened, disbelief warring with the undeniable truth of her words. Then Lyriceth revealed the turning point. She described Elias's insane maneuver, the idea of riding the storm rather than fighting it. She explained her own role, her innate Xylar capacity for spatial reasoning, but emphasized how it was the human element that made it possible. They did not cling to rigid protocols, she explained, her voice gaining a subtle passion. They embraced improvisation. They adapted their thinking, their actions to the chaotic environment. They found strength not in overwhelming force, but in their capacity for spontaneous brilliance, in their emotional fortitude, and in their profound interconnectedness. She paused, letting her words sink in. Ambassador Vance spoke of humanity's ability to find ways where others see only walls. I can confirm this. Their unconventional solutions, as he called them, are not a weakness. They are a profound strength. They are the very essence of their survival, their innovation, and their potential. The Cathar, for the first time, seemed truly humbled. Vorlag's predatory gaze lost its sharpness, replaced by a flicker of bewildered respect. The Xylar delegates, initially disapproving of Lyra Koth's unorthodox alliance, now understood the wisdom in her actions. Her words had not only explained the pioneer's escape, but had also redefined humanity in the eyes of the galaxy. The conference, once deadlocked in ancient animosities, found a new path forward. The Cathar, having experienced humanity's unpredictable resilience, were forced to reconsider their aggressive tactics. The Xylar, through Lyrakith's unique perspective, saw humanity not as a lesser species, but as a valuable, unpredictable force that could bring new dynamics to galactic stability. A tentative peace accord began to take shape, built on a foundation of respect born from an impossible escape. As Lyrakith prepared to return to the Xylar hegemony, she sought out Elias one last time. "Ambassador Vance," she said, her multifaceted eyes twinkling with a warmth he hadn't seen before, "my people have much to learn from yours, your human element. It is a force unlike any other in the galaxy." She extended a slender, elegant hand, and Elias, understanding the profound significance of the gesture, took it. Her grip was firm, her touch surprisingly warm. "Perhaps," she mused, a genuine, soft smile touching her lips, "there is more to learn from your species than mere diplomacy. There is ... life." And then she tilted her head, and a clear, melodic laugh, full of genuine amusement and a newfound understanding, echoed through the Pax Nexus. It was the sound of victory, not of war, but of humanity's spirit resonating across the stars, a sound that promised a future far brighter than anyone had dared to imagine.